If you are on Vtuber Twitter, you may remember seeing posed models like this trending a little while ago. And if you aren't familiar, then here's a brief explanation. Vtuber models track your actual facial expressions and movements, sort of like a puppet controlled by your face. They function as an avatar, most often used in streaming. The majority of Vtuber models are front-facing like this, and that's for a variety of reasons, mainly that it's easier, less time-consuming, and expensive on all sides, artist, rigger, and content creator. Front-facing models are very versatile for the streamer to use, and the symmetry makes a lot of things easier to draw, but even more so to rig. Rigging is a very time-consuming process, so being able to flip and copy-paste any of the work can be an absolute lifesaver. So, now that I've told you why you shouldn't get a posed model, why should you? Well, it's fun! They're different and they can be a lot more specific. Most posed models I've seen get used for just chatting or ASMR content, and they can bring a really interesting and unique atmosphere. So no, they're not as versatile, and therefore not as easy to use for the content creator either, but they're pretty cool in their own way. So I came to the conclusion I really wanted to make one myself. I doodled up some ideas and offered to do a posed model for a very affordable price, since I didn't have any experience making a posed model before. I ended up having a few people interested, which was super cool and made the decision really hard, but I ended up choosing Avery, and so the process began. So since this was client work, I was working off of the references provided to me, and thankfully they were great. I got super excited about this background. Honestly, it was a big factor in my choice to go for this model. A little bit of communication and initial doodles later, I had this color sketch. I really like doing colors early like this, even while everything is still super sketchy. It helps immensely with full background pieces like this especially, as it lets me figure out the composition better and most of the actual colors very early on. I also just think it looks nice and communicates my vision to the client better, which is a great bonus. And speaking of, at this stage we also agreed on what toggles to do, and I sketched those up, so here they are. Super happy / excited, sad, and focused. I'll talk about these more later when they become relevant again. And like I mentioned before, I was super excited about the colors and the background. Most Vtuber models are lit pretty neutrally, which is great. It shows off the features of the model well and fits into most situations on a stream. But it was really fun to work with something so different. A backlit night sky scene like this allowed me to have truly so much fun with the lighting and colors. I'm not the most skilled in picking colors, but after many studies and growing to understand colors and their relationships better, I actually find it really fun and interesting to draw backgrounds like this now, whereas before I found it immensely frustrating. This scene is basically bathed in the deep blue darks, and similarly bright blue light from the large moon, and so all my colors shift accordingly. The actual references feature a lot of warm orangey colors, which all got shifted much more towards pinks and purples. When you're looking at the final product altogether, ideally you wouldn't even really notice. The skin is still meant to look like a normal skin color, but in reality it's this desaturated pink color, and his brown hair is just straight up purple. Speaking of, the green plants are also just blue. Shifting the colors like this hopefully makes the whole piece and the whole palette feel a lot more cohesive. But like I said, I'm still not super experienced, so I'm sure that in the future I'll look back at this and see what I could improve, but right now I'm really happy with how it came out. Another big thing I focused on while doing the colors is legibility. Since I do lineless models, it's extra important. Without lines to divide the different shapes, I have to rely on color and mainly contrast. so that you can tell what's going on and things don't start bleeding into each other and getting confusing. Managing this can be easier or harder depending on the circumstances. The big moon in the background provided me with the ability and opportunity to include those rim lights, which helped. Avery's design also worked great with my style. For example, that bright yellow fur on the underside of his ears helps to make sure that they stand out against his dark hair. Unfortunately, I appear to have lost a bunch of the footage of me drawing it, which sucks, and I didn't really record anything while rigging, so stick with me here. It was mostly just rendering that I lost, some things I was proud of, like this little hand before and after, and some things I struggled with immensely, like that damn waterbed. I struggled with making it look water-y enough. At first it looked more like a gem or something. I think this final one is a lot better, but I can definitely still improve my water skills in the future. As for rigging, the first thing I did was actually the background animation. It's not anything crazy, just some gentle swaying and stars sparkling, but just a little bit of movement really helps make the scene not just static. But now onto the actual model. I told Avery ahead of time that the model would not have as wide of a range as I've done on other models, the main reason being that it's just much harder to do on a not front-facing model, but also a secondary reason is that I wanted to do a posed model for fun, not to chew my own tail off over something ultimately not that necessary. Because I was actually very confident I could get the model to look lively despite the limited head range. And I did this with the help of a whole lot of physics, but mainly the body movement. I actually think the body is what sells this model a lot. Due to him laying down, I was able to get away with quite a bit of movement, which normally can be a little bit difficult because when you have the model standing, and if you want the movement to look natural, you have to be aware of the center of gravity and make sure that the model doesn't look like it's just going to fall over. I also got to use some fun little tricks and details with the body. I already usually do physics-based movement, otherwise known as augmentation, on my models. It sounds super complicated, but it really is simpler than it sounds. I'm using the physics in Live 2D to add just a smidge of extra movement. And for the first time I did the same technique for the body, but I also added a little bit of delay. So the head moves first and the body follows, which makes the whole movement look a little bit more natural. It can honestly be a little difficult to spot, but I think details like this all together add up to make the model feel more expressive and give more of a almost fluid feeling to it. I actually really enjoy adding things like this that you wouldn't necessarily really notice. I just find something satisfying about all of these tiny little things coming together to form a cohesive whole. And speaking of expressive, let's talk about that some too. I did the usual facial rigging, and I quite enjoyed making the split pupils thinner when the eyes open wide, and so Avery suggested also making them a lot wider during smiling, and I think that came out super cute. Another big point of expression are the ears. In this case, I rigged them to react to brow movement and also smile. They switch to this wiggly animation when Avery is smiling, so this is fully hands-off for him, face tracking only. Whoever came up with that, because it sure wasn't me, is a total genius. It's kind of a pain, but it really does add a lot. And I also did a very similar thing for the tail. We actually encountered a really odd issue where it wouldn't work on my PC and on Avery's laptop, but it worked on mobile and on his proper streaming PC. I still haven't been able to figure out exactly why that would happen. My leading theory is that there's just truly so many moving parameters in this massive tail, like over 20. And times 2 because there's the slow and then the fast speed. So that could be causing issues. I will update if I get any answers. But mainly, I'm happy that it works well on his streaming PC, and that matters most. If you have any ideas, or please, if you encountered anything like this, please, please, please let me know. Now, on to another first time for me. Mouse tracking. I knew in theory it should be pretty straightforward, and I've already rigged the controller. But I still haven't done it before, so I informed Avery of that before I even started this entire process. And I'm honestly really pleased with how it came out. The arm movement does the heavy lifting, of course, but the fingers also extend to make that x-axis just a little bit wider. The brush presses down on a click, and I even added this little effect with the physics. I'm really happy with that, as I still consider myself, while not quite a beginner, definitely moderate in Live 2D, and I look up tutorials for most things like this. But I was able to do this one on my own, and pretty easily and quickly too. But while that one was pretty easy and fast, what wasn't was the waterbed. It's not the worst thing I've ever rigged, but there's just kind of a lot going on at the same time. Let's go over the animation first. There's the bubbles and the fish, which mostly just follow a set path. Then there's the looping waves, which I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but I decided to draw multiple textures and swap between them as the ring gets wider. I think it ended up looking nice, but I might need to do more experimenting with animating water if I ever do it again. For motion, there is physics, of course, it needs to bounce, but I also included the bed in the body movement as you saw earlier. This is because as the weight of the body shifts, it would affect the waterbed, and physics would eventually settle, but I wanted that tilt to remain. Speaking of physics though, because the physics move the edge of the water, I had to make sure that the idle animation, the rings coming out, would work together and warp, even while the physics are happening. So that was just a little added layer of complexity and making sure that things don't break or look weird. Lastly, I have to at least mention the expressions. I ended up doing a little line boil effect on the stars and lines. It's really simple, just draw it twice, slightly different, and flip between the two. I also did my signature different shaped pupils, and in this case it's both pupils and sclera, actually. The sad expression, of course, gets new mouth shapes, and that's it. I didn't go over every detail, every hair strand of physics, but I hope you enjoyed this extended look over the model, the process of making it, and the different features I added. I'd love to know what you think of this model and about posed models in general. I really enjoyed making it. I went on about it, but it really was just so fun to work with a full background illustration and a more shaded Vtuber model, for the lack of a better term. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing for more Vtuber art and rigging, and also other art videos. I do other stuff sometimes too. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much, and see you in the next one.